Well, the first time I heard anything about a corn organization in Missouri was like 1977. And I actually went to the first organizational meeting in '77, and I worked as a field services manager for Missouri Corn from '86 until the fall of '88, and then I became interim executive director in November of '88, and then that job finalized, became the permanent director in February of '89. In 1988, '89, we were just looking for something new and different. And so one of the things that my predecessor came up with was looking at plastics made from corn. And so we created some plastics that had 6% cornstarch in them, and they had 94% petroleum. And we even, there are a lot of funny stories that go along with corn, and there are some that you can tell and some that you can't. Well, this is a funny one that you can tell. We buried some of those bags, Governor Ashcroft did, up at the state fair. A year later, it was my job to go up and dig up those bags and see how far they had deteriorated, which I did. I dug up the bags, and I actually had one at my office that was hanging on the door that had deteriorated more than those bags that had been buried. So I immediately tore them all to pieces, and I buried them back again because we were thinking about having the governor go back up there and dig those up. And the last thing I wanted him to do was dig up a full bag. So it turns out we didn't do that, but that just showed you, that we didn't necessarily have that biodegradable stuff down in 1988. But after that was kind of the first big push, and then after that ethanol became dominant. We started hearing more and more about some of the new generation cooperatives up in the Dakotas and also in Minnesota. We actually helped pay for some legislators to go up to the Dakotas and go to Minnesota and find out what they were doing up there in terms of adding value to corn, primarily looking at ethanol, but also looking at these new gen co-ops. And whenever they came back, all of a sudden they wrote a new bill. It became House Bill 888, one of the probably best pieces of legislation for agriculture in the history of Missouri and one of the best in the history of the U.S. What it did then was create all types of incentives for farmers to invest in value-added products. So that became our number one goal, was to try to get farmer-owned ethanol cooperative off the ground, to try to build ethanol plants. And then ultimately, after we had some of those plants built, we looked at building markets, so that led to the Renewable Fuel Standard. And then after that, we've continued to look at markets, whether they be domestically or internationally. And now, the international market is a huge market for us, not just for corn, but also for ethanol, for distillers' grains. And then, of course, you could add in things like, the work we've done on the trizenes over the years, helping keep atrazine available to corn farmers. We did a lot of water quality work in Missouri. So a number of success stories. People always say how important it is to work together, and that's absolutely true with NCGA. It's extremely important. We know we can't do everything by ourselves, so we have to work with other groups. We have to work with all the states together to work with NCGA, but we also have to work with the other national commodity organizations in state. We work with all the other ag groups. We work with all the general farm organizations, the commodity organizations, our universities, our departments of agriculture. And whether it's at the state level or at the national level, we have fewer and fewer people all the time in agriculture, and that's why it's so important that we all work together. We may not always agree, but we have to work together for the common interest of everyone. The biggest challenges moving forward are trying to develop those markets. Right now we're seeing tremendous opportunity in China and on a global basis, maybe to increase corn sales. But now how we move from E10 to E15 and then ultimately help build the automobiles and the internal combustion engines that we're going to use for the next 10 to 15, hopefully 25 or 30 years, that they use ethanol and they use higher blends of ethanol. It's a perfect opportunity to work with those groups, and we have to do that. I also think that rules and regulations are going to be awfully tough for farmers. And so, as we get a new administration in that we're working with right now, repealing a number of the maybe successes the last administration had or that we had with them, on reducing rules and regulations, all of a sudden those are going to pop back up. So It's going to take working with environmental organizations. It's going to be working with other, farm organizations, commodity groups. We're going to have to try to come to some common ground at some point in time, because that could be our biggest challenge moving forward. It's twofold. It's continuing to grow and keep those markets that we have, but it's also keeping the regulatory environment in place that farmers can continue to do what they do best, and that's grow corn. It's been my honor to work for farmers all of these years, almost 35 years within the corn industry itself. A lot of great opportunities to learn from board members, to learn from staff. You never cease to learn in this business. Things change, and so it's been my great opportunity to work for farmers all of these years. I love the work that I've done. I look forward, to continuing to keep an eye on things and maybe go to a commodity classic and not have any duties or responsibilities at some point down the road. But I think the bottom line is it's been a great trip, and thanks everybody for the opportunity to work for you and with you.